Welcome back to Bull Sessions here on 680 KFEQ. Got a question that you want Brad to answer on the show? Got an idea for the show? Email the guys at bull@willcross.net. Now, here's Randy Baker and agronomist Brad Law.
Okay, Brad, we made her back. I've got a bit of a question for you. We're talking about terraces.
Terraces, yeah.
You said fix your Hickenbottom.
A Hickenbottom.
Yeah. Elaborate on that.
Well, a Hickenbottom is those, you seen those orange things sticking up in the field?
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't points. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're running in the field with the field cultivator or a tillage tool or a combine, when you hit those, you don't get points.
No.
Those are the vital things. That's the thing sticking up that...
tells you your riser's right.
The riser's there that lets your water out. So, have you ever run at night and that thing just jumped out of nowhere and you didn't remember it was there? And or there was a weed there and you wanted to get that weed and then you realized, wait a minute, the harrow on the field cultivator sticks out about yay much more than what that front, does. So we forgot about that.
That's a reminder to tell you how long your cultivator is?
Yeah, you've got to remember not to hit that.
Yeah.
Or, you're trying to get as tight as you can and oops.
How do you know?
I may have hit one a time or two. So if we could, if those aren't working right, I went out one spring and I took the time and I said I was going to do one or two every afternoon. So I went out with the skid loader and I had a little backhoe attachment made for it that I'd turn the machine. I dug those up and I put in the new Hickenbottom and dug that up. And then, the easiest way to find the tile?
No.
You just dig.
Just dig and you'll tear it up.
You'll tear it up and then you get to replace the whole thing.
Okay.
That whole section. And you want a big bucket, so you got a big hole with lots of room to work.
Yes.
And I fixed those, and then those terraces worked better, and even just a tractor and blade went out there and threw soil back to where it maybe moved from and got those terraces where water flows, They say plumbers know two things.
We're on the air.
It runs downhill and paydays on Friday.
Yes.
Well, farmers don't get a payday, but we need to know it runs downhill. Water doesn't run uphill unless we're pumping it.
No, it does not.
If you can if you can handle getting the water to flow to the riser, that's going to make things work better. So, we all get busy in the fall and then it rains. In the spring, it's wet. We don't get to do those projects. Well, with wheat, it opens time to do that. And, we're talking about terraces. Well, also, there's people that pattern tile. If they've got some flatter ground. My buddy in Indiana, he pattern tiled some ground last fall on 40-foot spacings.
40 foot?
40-foot spacings. Because it
How
is...
many $1 million did that cost?
Well, he had talked to the banker about that. But, it's flat like the pancake.
Yeah.
Well, if your soil has water and it can't get away and it goes anaerobic. Anna's kind of like a crazy girlfriend. She just takes everything and there's no oxygen left in the room. Okay? And then you want your soil to be aerobic. You want a girl that does aerobics.
There you go.
So she's in shape. So we don't want Anna. We want aerobic soil. Well, to get it to be aerobic, we have to get the water away. If it's pooling water, we want it to flow out. So that's one thing we can do. We look at our corn hybrids, let's say like a 6499. A lot of people plant it, good corn.
Yep.
It will handle wet feet.
Yep.
You take a corn, let's say like a 6408.
Don't plant that on wet ground.
We don't. We got to be placement, and that's we got to place those hybrids. And we look, and I was on one farm, and the guy didn't realize he had wet feet. Well, if you've got it, that makes a difference. If you're going to farm that farm for several years, and that's always a constant problem, we need to put the tile in, get it to drain. There's different row spacings, and we can get that water, get that oxygen in the soil, because I can't breathe without oxygen.
No.
I can't live.
It's very important.
The little microbes in the soil, they need the oxygen too. That's one nice thing. When we get that tile in there, his farm, that opened it up and it's draining, it's getting air to it, and he's going to move on to higher yields. And he's a young guy like me, so when he does this now, that tile is going to be good for years, decades to come.
Sure.
So every crop's going to be better from then on out.
And we have a lot of land in Missouri that's good bottom land that's wet. I mean, it's not just Indiana you say he's from.
Yep.
And we talk about Iowa and Illinois, the big flat land and the big rich dirt and all. But, there's a lot of crops grown in Missouri.
Well, and even like this, I've got one field on my farm that it's a little bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got to looking at it and noticing we had it in pasture and we've switched over to farming, and it's actually going to be certified organic.
Yeah.
Well, that's a high-valued crop being organic. Well, I'm looking at it, and after I get into this and watching it for a year, that bottom needs to be tiled.
It's wet.
It's wet. It doesn't drain in some spots. And if I could put that tile in, that's going to make my crop better.
Mm-hmm.
So what can I do to look better? It's not always about pouring on the fertilizer. It's not always praying for rain.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to manage more than one aspect. And we look at, okay, that is a problem on that spot. Even some people, if you've got an old trees and just old farmstead.
Everybody does.
And you're like, well, I need to clean that up, but we didn't have time. Well, if you plant wheat on that farm, that gives you a chance to clean up that spot. We've had neighbors that they bring in dozer and track hoe and they plant the wheat, they fix the terraces, they clean this up and that up, and then they can get that done where otherwise the helpers and everybody'd be sitting around in the summertime.
Right.
It gives them something where they are productive. And even though it's hot out, well, if you're setting in equipment, that's all right.
That works nowadays.
That works. And one other thing I forgot about on the forages, we forgot about Sudan grass, the Sudex. There's them Sorghum Partners people. They put on a little presentation for us, didn't they?
They did. As a matter of fact, we are an official dealer for them now, Sorghum Partners.
And that sorghum, that's Milo.
Yes.
And I've got a little Milo plot at my place.
Grain sorghum and forage sorghum.
Okay. Well, that forage sorghum can get you tonnage.
Mm-hmm.
Tonnage of feed. And I've put stuff after wheat. It turned off dry, put in the forage sorghum, and then we've cut it, baled it, and we had feed. It was cheaper to do that than trying to drive hundreds of miles to buy it.
Sure.
So we're looking at that, then you're talking the drilling expense and the seed expense, but you're talking stuff that gets up tall as a tractor.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get tonnage of it to get the cows fed.
Didn't you plant soybeans as something like one maniac thing a year or two ago like that? What did you plant beans as something that was tractor high?
Oh, that was on the Prevent Plant last year, Andy.
Oh.
I sprayed it with 2,4-D on the Prevent Plant last year, and it killed all the broadleafs, and it was cheap. It was effective and it was cheap. Killed all the broadleafs, and I'm heavy soybean in my rotation.
Right.
I always have. Dad was, Grandpa was. We were soybean guys.
Yep.
So we're soybean heavy. Well, with the Prevent Plant, we couldn't get out there to plant a cover, couldn't do nothing. And I sprayed it and got over it with a little old junky spray coupe. And I killed the pigweeds and the water hemp and the cockaburrs, sunflowers. But it left the natural grasses. And those natural grasses grew up, and they were as high as the hood as high of the hood of the tractor. And I brush cut that and put all that biomass down. I was like, man, if this was haying,
you didn't.
You can't hay it, but
right.
If you were haying it, you're like, man, that's 5 bales of hay. The cow guy in me kicked out and said, hey, man, that's 5 bales of hay. I'm just, shredding, and well, my soil livestock are going to get it. That's cycling nutrients. And I'm thinking, okay, if that was 10% protein and the bales weighed this, that's this many pounds of protein per acre. And then 16% of nitrogen is, protein is nitrogen. Get that right. 16% of protein is nitrogen. So you take all that math out and you're like, man, I may have grown like 70 pounds of nitrogen per acre just with that grass because there's so much of it. So it was just a, other way to think outside the box to make my ground better.
We have to do that. Another reason for this show is so we can help farmers be more productive and think outside the box. You definitely are outside the box. That's why you're here.
I don't know where the box is. I think this is a hot box in here at the studio.
It's all good.
It's actually hotter in here than what it is in your office.
Oh, come on.
I think you've got poor circulation or something that you've got to have at 90 degrees. If anybody's come in and visited with him, they understand how hot it gets in his office.
I've got to be comfortable, Brad.
And plus, I think you're full of hot air, Randy.
You and a lot of other people have said that.
But we're talking about forages, and we're trying to get this, we planted our wheat. We raised it. We treated it like a crop. We fertilized it. We spaced out that nitrogen. We paid attention to how the drill was set. We paid attention where that residue was flying out the back of the combine. We
need to do Milo that way, too. If you're planting that for a crop, you have to treat it as a crop.
Well,
just go out there and drill it and forget it.
You mean I just can't throw this in the planter and go?
Well, you can, but it's kind of
I got to go, Randy.
defeating the purpose.
The neighbor started this morning.
Okay, we're back to that again.
I got to go.
We know that don't work.
Okay. But, we're talking about grazing, chopping, having a forage. We're talking about improving that ground. Is it time to put terraces in? Is it time to fix our existing terraces? Do we try double crop soybeans? Because, you've got a pretty good price on those 79s that might be a good idea.
Extremely. Yes,
so,
they are.
I like that. If we need forage, the cattle are 5 miles down the road, but what could we do over here to get forage that I could put up and haul to where my cows are? We've got options there with the wheat.
Brad, we're going to have to quit.
We are?
Yes, we're running out of time.
All right.
I wanted to tell you this little thing, too. You thought you got away without my little Bible verse, didn't you?
Okay, well.
Okay, this is from Matthew 13, 3-8. Then he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. So we have to end it there. We'll see you next week on Bull Sessions on 680 KFEQ.
Thanks for joining us for Bull Sessions, brought to you by Willcross Seed. Randy and Brad will be back next Saturday morning, tackling more topics from farming to livestock, soil to seed, farm equipment to rural life. So be sure to join us next Saturday morning, same time for Bull Sessions, right here on 680 KFEQ.